that you responded to an altar call and asked Jesus to come into your life does not make you a what? It is just the beginning of wanting to become a Christian. Genesis chapter 50. We run through quickly the things we started to talk about the other week. Because in a way, we also need it. We were talking about becoming at peace with God and yourself, and then with yourself and others. Becoming at peace with God, self, and others. In our last study, we focused more on becoming at peace with yourself and with others. Today, we will look quickly at becoming at peace with God and yourself. Genesis chapter 50. I want to read verse 15 to 21. Genesis 50, 15 to 21. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "Perhaps Joseph will hate us and actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him." So they sent messengers to Joseph saying, "Before your father died, he commanded, saying, 'Thus you shall say to your brothers,'" to Joseph, "I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now, please forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father." And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face and said, "Behold, we are your servants." Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones." And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. To be at peace, we're told, is to be calm, to be satisfied, to be internally strong, and to live without anxiety in the face of any kind of situation, especially in the face of challenging situation. We live in the days where there are so many things that can make people to be afraid. Only those who are at peace will be strong. And we're saying you need to be at peace with God. You need to be at peace with yourself. And you also need to be at peace with other people. Now, for the child of God, The grace to be at peace is impacted by the Holy Spirit. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 to 26. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 to 26 talks about the fruit of the Spirit and the impact of the fruit of the Spirit. And when you read the fruit of the Spirit, you find it said love, joy, peace, and so on and so forth. So when as a child of God, you are in fellowship with the Holy Spirit, you will know a continuous source of peace. If your relationship with Him is stronger, your capacity to be at peace will be stronger. If your relationship with Him is weak, your capacity to be at peace will also be small. So, although the Holy Spirit is the one that gives us the capacity, you and I have the responsibility to make use of it, to exercise the grace that the Holy Spirit is given to us. We're told that no man can be at peace with himself or herself who is not first at peace with God. You must first be at peace with God before you can be at peace with yourself. And you must also, secondly, be at peace with yourself before you can be at peace with other people. When you're at peace with yourself, becoming at peace with other people will not be difficult for you to do. Now, we spend a whole lot of time talking about being at peace with others, and let's quickly look at what does it take then to be at peace with God? What does it take to be at peace with God? I want us to take our cue from the life of Joseph, starting from Genesis chapter 50, where we read. Verse 19 and 20 in particular is very important. Look at Genesis chapter 50, verse 19 and 20. Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me. But what? God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive." Now, when you look at those two verses carefully, it shouldn't be difficult for you to understand that Joseph knew God. He knew God. It shouldn't be difficult to know or appreciate the fact that Joseph had a current relationship with God. Because he said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, as it is up to today." So he wasn't talking about what God did yesterday. He's talking about what I know God is still doing now. Whether you can see it or not, I know it is God. So we can say, therefore, that Joseph had peace with God. Joseph was at peace with God. But the is key is, how did Joseph know God? But someone may quickly say to that, how can you say from those two verses that a man know God? So we'll just read a couple of things from the life of Joseph, and then we'll tidy them together to help us appreciate what we're saying about the fact that even if we do not know at what point Joseph came in contact with God, his life demonstrated that this was a man who knew God, who was at peace with God, and who maintained a relationship with God. Are you ready? Genesis chapter 39, verse 9. Genesis chapter 39, verse 9. This is Joseph talking to Potiphar's wife. He said, "There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and do what? And sin against God?" Genesis chapter 40, verse 8. Genesis chapter 40, verse 8. This was when two men told him their dreams in the prison. And they demanded of him to interpret for them. Look at what Joseph said to them. And they said to him, "We each had a dream, and there is no interpreter of it." So Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to who? To God? Tell them to me, please. Tell them to me, please." Genesis chapter 41, verse 16. Genesis 41, verse 16. So Joseph was brought before the Pharaoh, and Pharaoh told Joseph all the dreams he had had, the first one and the second one, a dream that nobody could interpret. And somebody said to the king, "If you can get Joseph, you get the interpretation." And so they brought Joseph. And the king was expecting Joseph to interpret his dream for him. But listen to what Joseph said to the Pharaoh. So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, "It is not me. It is not in me." Who will answer Pharaoh? God. We give Pharaoh an answer of peace. It is God that will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. Genesis chapter 41, verse 51 and 52. Genesis 41, 51 and 52. God blessed him with two boys. Not at the same time. They were not twins, one after the other. Joseph called the name of the firstborn what? Manasseh. And what is the meaning of Manasseh? Let's say that together. For God has made me forget all my toils and all my father's house. Verse 52. And the name of the second he called what? Ephraim. Why? For God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Genesis chapter 42, verse 18. Genesis chapter 42, verse 18. So his brothers had come, they had bought grains, and he was playing a joke on them, a trick on them, thinking they will understand. They did not understand. So he wanted them to go and bring his brother, Benjamin. And they were afraid. Because he already told them, I am Joseph. Hey, listen to what Joseph says. Then Joseph said to them the third day, do this and leave. For what? I fear God. I fear God. Genesis chapter 45 verse 5. Genesis chapter 45 verse 5. But now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to do what? To preserve life. Now, he told them this earlier. He still had to keep reminding. It's not you, it is God. It's God. And then Genesis chapter 50 verse 19 and 20, where we read, Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people. Now, when you look at all of these verses and put them together, like we said earlier, they buttress, they strengthen the fact that Joseph knew God. And he had a relationship, an ongoing, current relationship with God. He had an encounter with God that produced a relationship, and that is what made him to be different from his brothers. They were born by the same father, but he was different because he had something the others do not have. An encounter and a relationship with God. And that was what was guiding and directing his life and his affairs. When you read Genesis chapter 50, where we read, the brothers too saw themselves as servants of God. But did they live and behave like servants of God? No. So claiming is one thing. Living according to what you claim is an entirely different thing. Joseph was genuine. Joseph was genuine. Let me call your attention quickly to 7 things you can see as we tidy all of that up. Because Joseph had peace with God and had a relationship that is current with God, you will discover that Joseph recognized sin as evil before God. He didn't call sin by any name. So when he saw sin, he said, no. This is evil. God is not pleased with this one. So he ran away from it. He ran away from it. Because he knew that, if I do this thing, it will tamper with my relationship with God. It may give me pleasure. It may satisfy you also. But it will affect my relationship with God. And it's a relationship I cannot afford to compromise. I would rather hurt you and hurt myself and keep that relationship than seek to please me or please you at the expense of that relationship. So, he didn't see sin as a mistake. He saw sin as something that is what? Evil. It doesn't matter what others call it. And in the community of men, a relationship between men and men, it may be called any name. But when it comes to relating with God, it is evil. It is evil. It takes a man who is at peace with God to recognize sin as evil. Number two, because Joseph was at peace with God, you will notice that he acknowledged God as the source of his gifts and his talents. There was nothing to boast about or take personal pride or credit for. Those things came from God and must be used for the glory of God. But it's not me. It is God. You can imagine that by the time he appeared in the palace of Pharaoh, Genesis chapter 41, he was already a celebrity. Somebody introduced him to the Pharaoh. They went to bring him from the prison. And everybody was waiting for him. And the Pharaoh told him. And he could say, well, Pharaoh, you know what? If you want me to tell you the interpretation of this dream, number one, you must order my release from the prison. Number two, you see that Potiphar. I want you to put him in prison in my stead. Number three, and then he will give another one. Number four, and then he will give another. And then he will say, now we can go to the interpretation of the dream. But before I do that, can I get a bottle of water? Would they do it or not? They will give him. Say, I just remember that I've not eaten good food in a long time. Is it food you want? They will do what? They will give you. But there was nothing to boast about. Why? He knew that this is a gift from God. This is a talent from God. And this will call to question many people, we call them men of God who merchandise the gift of God.